Welcome back to the LIFE LATESTadapt podcast, Adapt to Thrive. In our first episode, we explored the broad world of nature-based solutions, as maybe already you know from the first episode, NBS, and their role in making Baltic cities more resilient. Today, we are getting into the roots of the matter, specifically focusing on science to cities. The stars of today's show are rain gardens. You might have heard the term, but do you know how they actually work? Are they just pretty flower beds, or are they sophisticated engineering tools? Today, we will explain the technical differences between rain gardens and biospheres and discuss how to choose the right native plant communities. We have a powerhouse panel of scientists and designers with us today. Ivar Anus from Tiek, an expert in urban water systems. Yuri Kondratenko from Riga Technical University, who works on smart sensing and digital tools. Mart Meriste from Nordic Botanical, a leading voice on native biodiversity and restoration. Marīts Brudzāne from Alps Landscape Studio, an architect with deep experience in Latvian urban spaces. And Gen Mandre from For People, a landscape architect in Estonia, involved also in Life Urban Storm project and one of the authors of Sustainable Urban Drainage Systems Handbook for Estonia. Together, we will discuss how these gardens act as our first line of defense against the overload of our drainage systems. So let's begin. To understand rain gardens, for those who maybe haven't heard them before, they are like installing a safety valve on a pressure cooker. In our cities, the pressure is the extreme rainfall hitting hard pavement. Without a rain garden, that pressure has nowhere to go, but into our basements and streets. The garden acts as controlled release, letting the water soak in slowly and safely, preventing the whole system from boiling over. And again, you were an author of the handbook. To start simply, what is the fundamental difference between a decorative garden and a rain garden or a biosphere? And are they the same thing, or are we confusing different tools?
To start simply, the key difference is in how the landscape is designed to deal with the rainwater. Typical decorative garden is mainly created for the visual enjoyment, plants, lawn, so on. When it rains, these spaces usually don't actively manage water. Often the soil is compacted and some surfaces are impermeable, so excess rainwater quickly runs off towards drainage or pipes. Rain gardens and bioswales are different because they are designed specifically to manage rainwater where it falls. Instead of sending rainwater straight into pipes, these systems use soil, plants, and natural processes to slow the water down, let it soak into the ground, and clean it before it reaches natural water bodies such as rivers, lakes, sea. A rain garden is a shallow planted depression that collects runoff from roofs, streets, so on. Its main job is to temporarily hold the water and let it soak into the soil slowly, while plants are cleaning sediments and pollutants out of the water. After the water infiltrates, the rain garden simply looks like a normal planted garden, like a normal flower bed. A bioswale is a little bit different. It's a vegetated channel or gently sloped corridor that guides water through the landscape from point A to point B, for example. Instead of holding water in one spot, it moves the runoff along the planted pathway while slowing the flow down. Along the way, plants and soil help trap the sediment, absorb nutrients, and allow part of the water to infiltrate. In simple terms, rain gardens mainly collect the soak water in one place, while bioswales guide water through the landscape while slowing it and filtering it. In many projects, they actually work together. A bioswale might collect runoff along the street, for example, or parking area, and then lead the water into the rain garden where it infiltrates.
So sometimes even maybe like a really simple look maybe is actually with flexible and multiple use. Maybe it's not just a flower bed, but we just don't know that it actually works as something else also. And if the rain garden is the basin, we need to understand how it fits into also the bigger picture as a city. And we often talk about the sponge city concept. Ivar, from a hydrological perspective, how do these structures actually work during a heavy storm to create a sponge city effect in Riga or Tallinn?
Yeah, like Ken already mentioned, so the main purpose for us is to two things: to decrease the overall flow, let's say, to the stormwater system, and to reduce the peak flows so that the maximum flow rates that we get to the stormwater system are decreased. So the sponge effect is usually becomes from the point of view that maybe we can infiltrate some of the water to the ground and then use the ground as a basin. In Riga and Tallinn, it can be quite complicated. For example, for Tallinn, this kind of a map has been drawn already, that where are the possible locations where we can infiltrate the water. And it turns out that actually there are not so many places to do that. And that's why we need to have this kind of a additional layer of spatial analysis, usually done not only hydrological analysis, to really find out that where is the land, who owns the land, where the potential for infiltration, for example, exists. And the other thing is, of course, are those places linked with a problem as well? Because as Ken mentioned, that we need to understand where are the main flow pathways, for example, that where is the majority of water collected, and we need to tackle those catchments and those areas with the system. So in summary, let's say that the sponge effect can be applied in some places, but we need to do quite specific geological analysis in order to actually implement those rain gardens to have the full effect.
And yes, related to specifically cities with more urban areas, the sponge made of concrete and pipes is one thing, but we are building the living systems. And also in our project, we focus on native rain garden ecosystems. And it isn't only about how it looks in a catalog. So maybe Mart, why is the project focusing so heavily on native plant communities rather than just using any hardly ornamental plants we find in a catalog?
Yeah, there are probably several reasons for that. And as Ivar mentioned, that there are like two targets of using rain gardens, but I will add an additional third one, which is preserving or promoting the biodiversity, the urban biodiversity, so we can use the areas from where we can deal the rainwater also as like biodiversity hotspots in urban areas. And why we are like testing the native plant species, even this has several reasons. First, for the biodiversity standpoint, just native plant species promote the maximum amount of biodiversity. So every native plant species is related to the quite a lot, probably hundreds of different other species in ecosystems. So the fungi and insects and worms and all types of other organisms. So if we try to get the maximum biodiversity in urban areas, we should use native plant species. And the other thing is that rain garden ecosystems are quite extreme ecosystems because they are like well drained, so they are very dry in dry seasons, and at the same time, when it rains, they collect rainwater much more per area than most of the regular green areas. So they are like very dry or very wet. And these extreme conditions mean that these plants can get quite like stressed, and also the additional factor is local climate. In our region, as we just saw, the winter can be quite cold, and as we remember from the last summer, it can be also quite wet. These extreme conditions are actually the conditions that our local flora is quite well adapted. So in these conditions, the regular ornamental plants can die out, and maybe we will see in spring that some of the flower beds are not overwintered very well, but usually the native ecosystems are very well adapted to the local climate, and also there are native ecosystems that dry out in the summer, in midsummer, and are flooded in autumn or in spring. So.
Yeah, I think like the climate and these really different conditions that they have to survive, so to say, are maybe also the biggest challenges, and why we need to find the right plants and solutions, because we also have heard these stories from where, for example, also trees have been planted in the wrong soil, and they just die or aren't maintained so well. So it's just kind of a waste because of some not thought through solutions. And it also can relate to the maladaptation, where something is created to improve or solve a problem, but in the end it doesn't, or even creates new problems. But maybe going towards the monitoring side of this, because also after we create these spaces, we also have to maintain them and monitor, and also maybe use something more, some other things or elements that can help us to do these things. And to make sure we aren't just guessing, we use digital change, and we need to be able to listen to the garden so we see if it's healthy and performing. And Yuris, we are identifying novel sensing techniques in the project. And how do we use technology to monitor if a rain garden is actually performing its job in real time? And can these sensors really tell us if the water is also getting cleaner?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. The question is how much it costs. So we are running several living labs in the city of Riga, where we, since 2023, monitor the performance of rain gardens. We mostly look at factors like soil moisture, infiltration rate. We also measure electroconductivity, that is like a proxy indicator for pollution. But to really determine the cleaning effect, so to speak, you need to take samples or have quite costly sensing equipment, like specific probes that measure nitrates or suspended solids or turbidity, things like that. That is also done, but it's more frequently done in not in rain gardens, because rain gardens bioswales are quite small techniques. So having, let's say, water quality sensor, expensive water quality probe in each rain garden will be very, very expensive. So if you have larger systems like wetlands or ponds to also attenuate and treat runoff, these are these techniques where you tend to have like more expensive sensors. That said, given the novelty, like I guess the novel thing overall in the sensing world, so to speak, is to make low-cost sensors, because like we as researchers are interested in placing sensors all over the place, and we of course do this in pilot projects, but let's say the sensing setup for a rain garden could easily cost several €1,000s. And then the question of in investment cost, as well as operation cost, as well as potential damage, right? So the future lies in cheaper sensors. But yeah, I mean, you asked how do we know whether the rain gardens or bioswales do what is required, and as I have mentioned, we have, well, we can say long-term monitoring of the real rain gardens or bioswales built in Riga, and we see that they perhaps function too well, meaning that they have been still historically rain gardens bioswales are being designed more by hydraulic engineers than landscape architects. So still we say it's a sustainable approach, but in many cases we still design rain gardens as pipes, just for higher infiltration, for higher throughput. And then we have the thing that Mart has mentioned, that in drier time it's too dry. So something we've seen by monitoring Riga rain gardens, that yes, they do perform as designed, but probably they are designed for too much runoff, for too much, let's say, throughput, too high infiltration, and too little water retention. And one line of work that we are doing is to develop, let's say, rain garden prototype that would be optimal in terms of infiltration and retention. This is something we're also working on.
And this brings us to also the very important point about how we standardize this work. As you said, that maybe we are creating some things, but maybe they are not working in all of those flexible uses they could work in. And as you mentioned, in Estonia, they already have the handbook to guide them, but maybe what is the current status regarding nationally regarded terms and technical guidelines in Latvia? Are we working also towards some standard guidelines? So it's not only experiments, but also real solutions.
Yeah. Like we have a set of guidelines. Actually, the first guidelines we prepared together with Ken when we had Latvia-Estonian project 10 years ago or so, even more. Wow. And then around 5 years ago, I'm also active in an NGO, Cleantech Latvia, and we have prepared several sets of guidelines for nature-based, for sustainable stormwater management. So additionally separately for municipalities and separately for designers and landscape architects. And since 2025, there are 2 national standards in force. One is about sustainable stormwater management general principles and requirements, and the other one is about bioswales and rain gardens. So the guidelines are there, but they are voluntary, meaning that if we take a look at the construction norms that are let's say enforceable, or that are obligatory for designers, then they are still old school. So this is so that, let's say, the responsible municipalities can require and advise nature-based solutions, and in fact they do, like Riga or Jelgava, but it's not a standard requirement for all of them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the also issues when something is created, but maybe it's not mandatory, so everyone can choose what to do or what not to do. But once we have these standards and the data also from the sensors, for example, we can also start predicting the future. And Ivar, maybe you can comment more about the fluvial flood simulation models, and also just modeling itself. And as you also already mentioned that, for example, in Tallinn, they have these spaces where they already can see where they should and could do something more about floods. And maybe in other municipalities or in national scale, if something is done with these models, and also about this maybe so to say real-time simulation, what is also expected in the project. Has it been done before also somewhere?
Yeah, what we have done in LIFE is we made this kind of a procedure for flood risk assessment, which depends on different type of models. And we saw already in the beginning that the data is a crucial thing that we need to consider. And yes, like Juris mentioned, that we as scientists, we would like to gather as much as possible, but it costs some money, not only setting up those systems, but to maintaining them on a specific level as well. So what we did, we took a different approach. So we developed this kind of a 3-stage risk assessment methodology. And with the first stage, you only use open data that is available from different databases, let's say taking into account where are the roads, where are the buildings, where are the green areas, where are the vulnerable society groups, where are the critical infrastructure elements, and so on. And then you assess using different, let's say, extreme rainfall events, that where actually could be those areas in the municipality where risks are higher, but not only hydrological risk, but risks in general, considering different type of vulnerabilities and hazards and so on. And if you tackle those areas, or you define those areas, then you go more into detail, and you will build up a hydrological model, let's say, for that area or that catchment, and then you can predict future in this sense that if you change something in the catchment, let's say add some nature-based solutions, rain gardens, whatever, which is doable in modern models. And then you say that, okay, what is the effect for the risk assessment or the risk for the risks in that case? But I would like to maybe point out one other thing that we have recently been working on, and it's why those rain gardens and swales tend to fail, for example. So we recently published a paper on that, considering the failure modes in planning, design, and operation phase. And maybe 3 things to highlight is that if we plan those things a little bit wrongly, let's say, then the failures are not critical, but they result in underperformance of the system. So they do something, but they don't do it as effectively as we planned. But if we fail in design and operation, then usually those systems fail critically, so they don't work at all. The other thing was that what we found out is that the systems are really complex, and one engineer or one department actually cannot solve usually the problem. So there's kind of a cross-departmental approach, and using different engineers like, let's say, landscape architects and let's say, designers and so on, is critical in order to decrease the failure rates. And the third one was maybe the most important one, or most interesting one, that we're missing intelligent failures. So if something really happens, I tried, I failed, and I don't report about it. So that's the problem, that actually we don't get the chance to learn from each other, because we're maybe afraid of reporting this kind of failures. And this is something that we're really missing in the ecosystem at the moment.
Oh, okay. It's a intriguing summary for the paper to read more. But eventually the digital models also meet the shovel, and this is where we often encounter stepping stones, the hurdles that can make or break a project. And Marit, from a builder's perspective, what are the most common physical obstacles you face in a densely populated urban area regarding creating rain gardens?
Definitely, the usual problem is limited space. And also kind of a lot of utilities, so you can't achieve the depth. You can't very often actually put any plantings or any significant plantings. Also, existing trees where you can't or won't disturb the kind of root system. So limited space also limits our ability to kind of create something, some working system. But I would say that it's not like exactly technical difficulty, but also lack of understanding in municipalities about what the system is, what it does, that it can work, and it is also kind of a big obstacle to really persuade engineers on the other side that this solution is actually something that can fix our problems. I would say that sometimes it even is bigger problems than this limited space of denser urban environment.
But also maybe sometimes the hardest part isn't even the soil, but the paperwork. And again, in your experience, is it harder to design the garden itself or to navigate governance hurdles like getting permits from officials who might still prefer, as Marit mentioned, the traditional grade concrete infrastructure?
There is actually one word, keyword, awareness, and a lack of it. I mean, first the client has to know that these solutions exist in the first place at all, and be able to ask for them. I mean, that applies to both private clients and local governments. If the goal and expectations are not explained correctly, the designer or the service provider, for them it's very easy to kind of how to say, people are slaves of comfort and habits, I would say, unfortunately. And if they're used to do, let's say, those gray solutions, then it's very easy to go back to them. So if the client doesn't ask for them, it's very easy for a designer to go back to the habits. So this takes us to procurements. They need to be described really detailedly. I mean, client has to ask correctly what they want. So in my view, I think raising awareness is the key word among clients, architects, among everybody. I mean, every party should be aware about the project, the design, and so on, all the details of the project. I would especially recommend that local governments, in case of bigger projects, they should actually do a little more collaboration with specialists in nature-based stormwater solution field. In that case, these ideas are integrated into the planning and design process.
And as also Marita knows from her experience that we are working on the standardized design criteria in this project. And maybe from your side, how do you see how will these standards or like guidelines more make your jobs easier in the future? And do you feel the lack of guidelines overall for example, plan choice or technical solutions, especially for our climate in Baltic states?
Absolutely. As was just mentioned, understanding that these solutions exist and like detailed description, what it means, it is a key. So if a client knows what to ask, it is very important. And sometimes we see the good practices that, for example, municipalities, they ask for consultation they ask architects, landscape architects, to consult them on how to give a detailed description of what they need. But guidelines like that actually would give them instruments to do it very, very detailed and ask specifically. And there are a lot of misconceptions and some things that also Mart mentioned about plant selection for the rain gardens. The usual misconception: oh, it's rain garden, so these are kind of water-loving plants, and it will be kind of like a little pond that we are designing. So understanding of what it is, what it means, definitions, and so if a client can ask for specific solution, we can give the best results. It's very important.
Yeah. I think that's really the all of the keywords were already said, but the awareness is the main point. And finally, we must look also at the bottom line. When stakeholders look at histograms, the economic argument usually wins the day, as also it was mentioned. And maybe Yuris, from your experience, when we talk about city costs, can rain gardens truly save a municipality money when you compare the implementation costs, for example, for 30 years of the maintenance?
Yeah, well, something I'm going to say will be based on my intuition on literature, because we do not have such studies in Latvia or Estonia. I believe there is not yet a history of 30 years of maintaining rain gardens. That said, the mother of all bioswales that is located in Riga in Spice home shopping center since 2017, actually. So it's nearly 10 years in operation. And I guess one telling fact is that about that bioswale is when considering the expansion of the shopping center, they did the same, right? And it's the developer who really counts the money. And it is in a way funny story, because we did some monitoring there as well, and the owner had changed since the construction of the bioswale. And when I approached the new owner asking, look, we want to make some full-scale infiltration tests and some water quality measurements, etc., and they told like, oh, we didn't know it was there. So it means that normally these techniques are located in the landscaped areas, so you invest their money anyway, and you invest money in operation and maintenance anyway. So this is like this is how you actually increase the value from the square meter of land. And besides, let's say contrasted with other landscaping, you have much more water coming in. So it's quite you can assume, and we see it from the data also, that you don't have to water these areas. There is enough soil moisture there. In fact, there is excess water that if you do a clever design, you can store and probably use for irrigating other areas adjacent to the bioswale. So yeah, and I mean worldwide there are different studies on cost effectiveness. Basically, it's quite nuanced. It depends on the specific case. But in city like Riga, where the present sewer capacity is constrained, yes, it saves the money, because you don't have to expand the capacity if you can build the rain garden. The other thing is that these are still decentralized features. So you can create, let's say, one expensive stormwater reservoir or new sewer in a flooded area, but it's quite difficult to build rain gardens in all of the streets. So this is the thing that needs to be done, of course. And whenever you have a street reconstruction, this is like that is the thing that should be done by default, together with trees and permeable pavements, etc. But so yeah, again, quick answer yes. Long answer is a bit more nuanced. Yeah.
And also, people often worry about the green infrastructure will look maybe messy or is too hard to keep up. And maybe Mart can comment, what does a professional maintenance actually look like? And maybe what are the things that clients usually forget related to maintaining nature-based solutions, and especially rain gardens, from your experience?
There are some public maybe assumptions, and one of this can be that the rain garden is like a flower bed, just like a regular flower bed, but with some extra functions. But when considering native plant species, they are mostly very beautiful, no doubt about it. But if you are looking, there are no such big flowers as sunflowers, for example, in native plant species, and it has its reasons. But if we are using native plant species in greening, it means not that we are making a flower bed, but we are actually creating an ecosystem. So it's sort of regulated, but sort of not regulated at all. So it has its own dynamics, and all the plant species we are wish to see there may not grow. So that's the like the general rule. And in general, if we are looking for this low maintenance rain garden, it looks like an urban meadow. So it's meadow like, it's not like a flower bed. We can make it look as a flower bed as well, because we have here one test rain garden, and we are maintaining it so we can grow species that we are actually like to grow here. So they are not competing with each other so densely. So all the species we are using actually are still growing after almost 3 years now. So it's possible, but maintaining means usually just mowing, and it's once or twice per year, and that's all. And if you are counting the expenses, it's usually a lot cheaper than, for example, maintaining the lawn. And if you consider especially the biodiversity benefit out of it, it's like unmeasurable.
And so I understand that we could say that there can be different kind of rain gardens, also the visual side. So if some city wants like a jungle rain garden, or a meadow rain garden, or a pretty flower bed rain garden, so there are some types, so to say, to choose. But of course, you have to choose the right plants, the right solutions. But it is possible. So not everything has to be messy as people maybe name them. Maybe
it doesn't have to be. It can be like if you're just planting or sowing the seeds, and then let the ecosystem like develop in its own way. Then you can have something like a meadow, but you can actually do the flower bed as well, because and using only native plants. So it's also a possibility. The difference is in maintenance. And if you are making something that looks like a flower bed, you have to maintain it as a flower bed. So lots of hand weeding and replanting, and but if you are willing to do it, it's also possible to do with native plant species, and you can choose. I guess about 100 species are suitable to create this rain garden systems. we are testing 62 right now. So, but it's probably a lot more, maybe even 200 species that can be used to create, and they don't have to be like very suitable plants that are growing in this type of ecosystems naturally. You can actually use different species that are just they are not in natural ecosystems. There are plants that cannot tolerate flooding, for example, but they can tolerate flooding in this type of artificial ecosystem when the soil is well drained and when the flooding is very short, for example. So the choice of species is really huge, actually.
Okay, so it seems that for mandatory landscape architect and an architect is needed for a rain garden, for sure, to choose what is the best for the site. And maybe let's close with some inspiration. We want to see where this is already working, and maybe Marit and Gen can comment what are some of the best existing examples of rain gardens in Latvia and Estonia for our listeners. Yes, maybe Marit can start with one or two examples that are on top of your mind.
Yes, definitely. I can say that last year we finished rain gardens in Children's Hospital in Vienības Gatve. It was rather huge parking area, which is now planted and very beautiful, and also kind of divides these zones. So this is something that we are very happy about also collaboration with children's hospitals, that they kind of are open to these ideas. And one also that is a little bit earlier project, not ours, but dārzi. Dārzs Theater rain garden just as a besides Brīvības Street, so that is very visual in very kind of visible spot, and this actually is a very good advertising project because many people saw it, and many people saw that how beautiful can it be, how well it can work actually, and like few things what Jurijs also mentioned, that what we are seeing now, for example, these large supermarkets like Spica was mentioned, Alpha, and also Depot, where we had experience, we see that clients the first project we make, we need to do a lot of really argumenting and really going into the battle. And the next project, they are asking, please do the same. We want a rain garden in our parking. Like, we are not doing any pipes because we know that it works. So it kind of, these examples, these are very, very important.
Okay, and maybe some examples from Estonia's side.
When Ivar mentioned that we don't know much about so-called failures or bad examples in Estonia, I would like to say maybe I'm not doing my homework properly enough, but I think we don't know enough about good examples either. I mean, if you're not connected with a certain project, or you're not Googling every day different projects in Estonia, then it's kind of difficult to know about all the possibly good examples. So in that case, I would bring out, I think, Estonia's role model as a municipality, Viimsi. They are doing pretty good job. And if you want to see good examples, I think simply go there and have a look.
Okay, it's a really great compliment also to this project and for Viimsi. And so as we wrap up today's episode, I think it's clear that a rain garden is much more than just a patch of green. It is a high potential ecosystem engineered to protect our homes and streets. We have learned that by choosing the right native plants and using smart digital tools, we can transform a potential flood zone into a functional, beautiful asset for our communities. A big thank you to Ivar, Jurijs, Marit, and Gen for helping us bridge the gap from science to cities. And if you're inspired to create a rain garden in your own community, remember that you are a part of generation restoration, and your efforts to manage water locally help reduce the burden on our entire region's infrastructure. So don't forget to check our website for more info, and also the guidelines that will be ready next year. And join us in the next episode, where we will move from the design phase to the stakeholder engagement. So stay resilient and keep growing.